Weights and Downer. You or someone you know has lost the ability to earn a living because someone put the company interest before their well-being. In times like these, there's one firm who has handled hundreds of catastrophic and lost earning cases. Before you settle fast with a company's attorney, give Weights and Downer a call. 985-876-0870. Weights and Downer. Let us fight for your rights.
Hey everybody, welcome back into Bayou Time. Harry McCullough here. We are wrapped up this special session in Baton Rouge, and here joining us to talk about what happened during it is Jerome Zeringue. He's a representative from District 52. So good to have you back in Terrebonne Parish, Jerome.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Looking forward to the break.
Yeah. I thought you guys might be there for a while, but yeah, y'all had a cutoff, so you had to get it done. A lot got done too, right? And we talked about it. When you got a Republican governor and you got a supermajority in both houses, that you can't blame anybody else. If you're going to get stuff done, it's going to get done now. And you guys came out with a lot done. I guess we talk about state income tax, which is I guess that's the major thing here. You compete against Texas, Florida, Tennessee, soon to be Mississippi is all having no state income tax. You're trying to get there. You guys moved the ball quite a bit here.
Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, through this past special session, we were able to cut taxes for people and businesses. And you're right that we are competing on those other states, but there is some differences. Everybody says like you want to compete or you want to compare yourself to Texas and Florida. It's different.
Love to.
Yeah. Well, their economy is different too. They also pay a lot in terms of property tax, of which we don't.
That's where the schools come from.
But we have made significant advancements in terms of our tax structure, which hadn't changed really since the last constitutional rewrite in 1974. And if we are going to change, if we hope for change, you're going to have to make some changes. And so that's what we did. We reduced personal income tax. Not typically, but what we had previously was a bracketed personal income, 1.8, 4, and then 6. And now it's a flat tax for $300. We've increased the deduction that people have to offset some of the changes that we have, because we also, we'll talk about this as well, increased the sales tax 0.5 to now it'll be 5%. The 0.45 was supposed to roll off this year. So that's staying, and they added a 0.05, so it's now 0.5.
Yeah.
And obviously everybody says, and it's true, it's regressive in terms of sales tax, but it hits the lower income folks, but everybody pays with the sales tax. And so to offset that on personal income tax, your first $12,500 it used to be $4,000. That's been raised to $12,500. You don't pay taxes on it. And if you're filing jointly, the first $25,000, you're not paying tax. So that's going to help those in the lower income bracket to offset that impact from sales tax.
So is this expect to raise revenue or to break even revenue? Do we just move it around as we're paying different, where tourists may pay more and sales tax may pay more? Or is it how do we balance this?
Well, there's a lot of things that went on in this past session, and it's, for the most part, you could say it's neutral. Some people saying you're just shuffling the chairs in the Titanic, but actually we made some significant changes when it comes to not only personal income tax, but also looking at how the state collects and utilizes both corporate and franchise tax. We've eliminated the franchise tax. We were only one of the few states that had that, and that's a disincentive to business. It hurts a lot of businesses. Reduced the corporate income tax to 7.5, which was the highest in the nation, and reduced that to 5.5. It's still high compared to other states, but at least it puts us more in a competitive position that we can now hope to attract businesses. We also looked at taking some of the money from Revenue Stabilization Fund, which was used the intent of that fund was to get it to $5 billion, and then the revenue, it had been like a trust fund. That money would have been used to pay for infrastructure. Well, the chances of it getting to $5 billion, it was like 2.3. We might have got there, it might have been a while, but what we're going to do is roll that money into the rainy day fund, budget stabilization fund, and then offset some of the money that we used to pay down some of the inventory, use it to offset the inventory tax, and we can talk about that because there's a lot of different things. And inventory tax is going to affect
Terrebonne
but
Parish, right.
yeah, we've extended that to allow parishes to adjust, but to offset some of that. And it also will provide an opportunity to utilize some of those dollars to pay down some infrastructure issues. And also, and there's the constitutional amendment we can talk about too, that's going to work on providing the permanent pay raise for teachers. It's going to pay off the unfunded accrued liability for the teachers' retirement system, which will free up dollars for local districts that they in turn can make the $2,000 that we gave them in stipends the past 2 years a permanent pay raise. So $2,000 for teachers and $1,000 for support workers as well. So those are a lot of the things that we've done. So to answer your question, it's somewhat neutral, but it allows and changes the way we collect those taxes that in the long run, and what the goal is those benefits, and as the economy improves, ultimately get to the point where we can eliminate the personal income tax. I think the governor's expressed an interest to work toward getting the personal income tax to zero.
Yeah. 'Cause, that a lot of time is a benefit, right? When you cut taxes, it raises the economy and the way things happen. You end up bringing in more income. I guess the last time Trump did the tax cuts, they actually brought in more revenue from the government to the government because of the economic stimulus. You did mention, was it like the ad valorem tax? Did I say that wrong?
The inventory tax. Yeah. So the inventory taxes, you talk about bad taxes for businesses, and that's a complicated subject, but essentially what happens is parishes tax inventory on businesses. So if they have inventory, they're taxing the inventory, and what happens is that is remitted to the state, and then the state reimburses the business. So for the businesses, it's been a wash. Well, we're eliminating that, and parishes can opt out, and if they opt out, there's a 4-year window. If they opt out, then they won't be the credit to those businesses, but hopefully there'll be some things that we're doing that can offset that to help the parishes, and we could talk about specifically how those things are going to happen.
Yeah, because that you don't want to leave a big hole in local government as well,
Right.
So you want to do it all out of Baton Rouge and then blow up what's going on locally. So, all right, we'll take a break. We'll talk more about that when we come back right here on Bayou Time.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Harry McCullough here. We're speaking with Jerome Zeringue of District 53. Just got back from the special session, and wrap up what you were just talking about as far as inventories, and so who's going to see a benefit? Those businesses see the benefit, or is it going to hurt local governments? And you guys have a way to kind of help those local governments as we kind of phase out inventory tax, right?
Right. So the intent is to get rid of the tax because, again, it hurts business.
Yeah, if you just have cars on the lot or something.
All your inventory, and it's not just the auto dealers, it's others too. Primarily auto dealers and others, so they're taxing inventory. So the plan is to phase this out over 5 years so that each parish, if they choose to opt out, will be given a $15 million, up to a $15 million cap. If they weren't over, it's to offset 3 years of collection. If they were collecting more than 15, they're not going to get more than 15. If they were getting less than 15 total, they'd get whatever the lower portion is, but up to the cap of 15 million over 3 years. And then hopefully some of the things that we're working on, the only increase in tax, everybody talked about services were going to be taxed, dog grooming. They considered in the House dog grooming, tattoo parlors, there was 40 different stuff, but that's now off the table. The only increase in taxes, apart from what we're paying right now, is digital media, the Netflix, and that's the only increase. But apart from that, so hopefully the increase in businesses can help offset that, and parishes now can continue, if they choose, to tax pharmaceuticals. But the plan is to phase out the inventory tax, and that there'll be other revenue sources to offset that ultimately they won't have to do it anymore. If they do choose to keep it, they won't get the state reimbursement, which will be a burden to businesses, obviously, if the parish, and puts that parish at a competitive disadvantage because somebody will say, well, hell, I'm going to take my inventory and go to the next parish that's not collecting it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where parishes are going to have to make a decision, but they have an opportunity to phase that out over the next few years.
Okay, so we have more constitutional amendments on the way. Are some of them tied to this as well?
Well, there's a constitutional amendment that's tied to this for the teacher pay raises. So that's, people will have an opportunity to vote for changing Article 7. That's where the article within the Constitution that deals with a lot of funding and how we fund state government. So there'll be a rewrite on that to allow those things that are in the Constitution, the legislator, the flexibility to be able to utilize it so we're not as restricted in our ability to adjust it for the budget. Now, there will, in a lot of cases, have remain a 2/3 provision that it's going to take 2/3 of the legislature to change it, which gives that some added protection, but it won't be constitutionally protected that you'd have to go back to the people to change it. So that's going to allow for the two funds that I talked about, taking that money from revenue stabilization, put it in a budget stabilization. And there's also going to be some other things that for the school system, K through 12 education trust fund and stuff that will allow for the teacher pay raises in that constitutional amendment.
Those are all on the ballot in December.
No, that will be in March.
Okay.
The ones in December, there's 4 that we now can vote on right now. And the first one is the change in the Judiciary Commission.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that one, I mean, on its face, it sounds good because it's adding additional members. We need more transparency. The challenge and where I think some people will question is it's allowing the Speaker of the House to appoint 2, the President of the Senate to appoint 2, and the Governor to appoint 1. So if all we're doing is adding additional people, there's nothing to say qualifications or anything like that. So whether or not that helps, the people are going to have to decide, but essentially puts 5 more members on the Judicial Commission, that they're the ones who advise the Supreme Court as to whether to take action on a particular judge. The other one is to allow more time for lawmakers to review spending bills. Right now, we've had in several sessions where, it went through conference committee and we have, 5 minutes before we have to adjourn, sign it down. This was one year, it was midnight, we were supposed to adjourn. And it was at 11:58, we were voting on it. So this bill is intended to say you have to have 48 hours before you do that. The challenge with this, and where I'm somewhat concerned about it, is that we already allow by rule to do that. We can do it. We don't need a constitutional convention. I think the legislator who proposed this is really frustrated. Now, I agree. I'm frustrated too, and wanted to ensure that it's constitutionally enforced. Right now, we have the rules, but we kind of ignore that rule.
Sure.
But it's already in place if we wanted to exercise that. So it's just going to be up to the people whether they want to vote on that or not. The other is to lengthen the legislative session if needed to pass a spending bill. So this would allow the legislature to stay in after we adjourn in increments of 2 days up to 6 days. So in my opinion, if we pass this, you don't necessarily, well, it's the same thing, but you wouldn't need the other because if you're given a little more time, you could at least use this to extend the time. So I think if you had to choose between the two, this is a little bit better.
To the deadline.
I know, and unfortunately, that's kind of the way government works.
Right.
But if I had to pick between the two, I think this one provides a little bit more flexibility and opportunity to work through some of those issues without forcing it. Right. But again, it's up to the people. And the fourth one and the final one, now this one's complicated. It's a tax sale of property, and we don't have enough time to discuss how complicated it is. That's why you put these things on the ballot, and it's going to be challenging for people to read this and recognize what it is.
When they walk.
But it's kind of like, when the tax sales, right now you have investors, they see property available, they want to invest in it, they'll pay all the taxes and they can get it. This one puts a lien on the property, and that person who puts the lien will be able to invest in it and utilize it. But all property, people who have an interest in the property have to be notified. So it's a little complicated. Actually, it's a good thing. So I would suggest people to look at it and consider it because that would help in terms of how we do property sales.
But one of our big issues is blighted property. And you were still dealing with it from Katrina in 2005, 20 years later, right? And because of all these rules, you can't take a property, for eminent domain. So
This supposedly is going to help the process. They're saying.
okay. Well, Jerome, thank you so much. We appreciate you clearing up some of that. Very complicated, but very important session up there in Baton Rouge. Thank you, man.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back with more Bayou Time right after this.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.